Welcome into Flyover Footy on the big YouTube and Instagram. You guys like how I did that? There we go.
Oh, man.
There you go, Phil.
It looks like you're going like gorilla style here.
What kit are you wearing, Phil? Is that Sweden?
No, it's
Ukraine.
The stupid mic. I should just move it.
Yeah,
It's Ukraine. It's I didn't think I was gonna find this, but there was like a Euros jersey that has Crimea on the bottom.
Oh, no way.
And you can't see it on here, but it got banned because it has Crimea, and it was after Russia took Crimea, and so I thought it was a cool kit to have. I found it on eBay, so
that's awesome.
I don't know if I should have said that while we were live, though. The Russos are gonna track me down.
Yeah, no one's in their car. Well, I might be, Jason. You don't
know. That's true.
Guys, we have a few things to talk about tonight.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And it's all injuries, like the entire show. Nothing but St. Louis injuries. So strap in because we've got an hour and a half.
The funny thing is there's a lot to talk about, and you're saying this, and I'm like, there's like he could mean any one of 3 to 5 things.
It's true.
Pretty big deals right now.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stories to follow in this game, for better or for worse. I'm also trying to figure out like what's the best way to talk about these injuries, because you know, there's a good news, bad news. There's a start off strong and end weak. I don't know. There's a lot of schools of thought on how to present this.
In what way? Like
in the order in which we.
Yes.
Yeah, the order in which we talk about it.
I like that. We'll let you work that out.
I think I've made my decision.
Okay, let's get with it since we're late. You ready?
I'm as ready as we'll ever be, man.
Here we go. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy on the big 550 KTRS. We have a special show for you today because it's rivalry week, everyone. We're playing St. Louis is playing Sporting Kansas City in Kansas City, and to help me do that today, we have Matt Baker and Stu Holtgren on the line here. Stu, no video for you tonight. If anyone is signed on to see Stu, as usual, you have to just find the right night to see Stu's pretty face.
Oh, yeah. Well, I actually figured it. I mean, boring story that I'm going to take up some airtime on for a second. But no, I was changing out the laptop battery in my computer. And when I messed with something back there, I must have reconnected the camera. And then I had to swap it out again to put in one that was actually functional. And now it's dead again. So fun stuff.
Camera gate for Stu. I love this.
Yeah, it's like 10, this laptop's 10, 12 years old. So at some point, I'll have to buy a new one, but we'll see.
I love it. And you, your call sign here on the video chat is in parentheses, Watts going on. It's such a good pun. I had to say it. And applicable to today. Yeah,
I mean, it could be, what's going on to a lot of different things with this club right now. What's going on with Sporting Kansas City?
We're going to get into it quite a bit, and to help us with that especially is Matt Baker. Matt, how are you doing, man?
As good as I can be right now. It's been a week, not just for me, for us, but for St. Louis City. The hits keep on coming, and we're going into this match far from 100%. So I'm just I'm excited to talk about it and kind of prep everybody for the madness that's about to ensue.
Well, one thing you've got going for you is your camera worked. So if I can just go on and on about Stu's camera, I'm going to try to bring it up a few more times on this one. No, let's dig into a little bit of information here. As we've been saying lately, we zoom out at the beginning and kind of get more specific as we go down. So Matt has fixed my zoom out comment by putting in the phrase bird's eye view, a much better way to describe what we're about to give you.
I was a marketing major in a former life, and I like to have those buzzwords. I like to, have segments, so to speak. So here's our bird's eye view. Head-to-head, going into this first rivalry match of the season. We play each other twice this year now instead of the usual 3 times we had been. But because we've been playing each other 3 times a season plus playoffs, there's a lot of matches these two teams have played. And so you could argue that there's a lot of familiarity between the two clubs, but as we'll talk about later, that's not really the case. But head-to-head over the past 2 seasons, this is the team that St. Louis has played the most, obviously. And the series is tied, 3 wins, 2 losses, and 3 draws each. The last matchup, St. Louis won 3-1 on September 28th, 2024. Goals were scored by Cedric Teuchert, Rasmus Alm, and Edu Leuven in that match, if you remember it. It was a home match for St. Louis. And that is one of the storylines that we'll follow here in a little bit, the fact that we haven't won at Children's Mercy Park. But like I mentioned, this year, these clubs are different. So let's look at where these clubs are sitting right now, and let's spend some time on the St. Louis side because there's plenty to follow, plenty of storylines to follow for SKC, as most people probably know. But let's look at St. Louis first. St. Louis currently sits 9th in the West at 2-2-2, 4 goals scored, 2 goals against, and a +2 goal differential, as has been the topic of a lot of conversation in the past week. We're also on a 2-match losing streak. The last 3 matches were a 1-0 loss, a 1-0 loss, and a 1-0 win against Austin, Philadelphia, and Seattle, respectively. Some trends to follow in these last 3 matches, or these last 6 matches, basically. 3 of 5 matches have scored, or 3 of 6 matches rather, have scored 0 goals. That should be 4. 4 of 6 matches have scored 0 goals. This team has been wildly inconsistent in their attacking. So not just 4 matches with 0 goals and then three goals and 1 goal, but in just the shooting, it's been wildly inconsistent. We've had matches where we've had 17 shots, 5 on target. Most recently, it was 16 shots, 2 on target. But we've also had matches with 2 shots and 2 on target, 5 shots, 1 on target. This team has really been up and down on generating shots, generating chances. And if you're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, stay tuned for the wind down, because we're going to get a little bit into some of those stats, and talk more in detail about why I truly believe the chance creation isn't as bad as a lot of people think. The generating of shots and the quality of shots really hasn't been as bad as a lot of people think. We're actually doing better than league average when it comes to great, good, and fair expected goal shot opportunities. And I'll dig into that in the wind down, but that's a little tease that it's the finishing that's the problem. It's not necessarily the chance generation. But what is a problem for St. Louis going into this match against Sporting KC is player availability. You could argue, and we're going to talk about until we're blue in the face, some of the formations, some of the choices and questions that we have for St. Louis, but you have to set the level ground here of who we even have available. And this is taking up far too many of our show notes in the space for player availability. I will say that for Matchday 7. It's almost like we're in Groundhog's Day from last season, guys, because I'm going to start with the bad, and then I'm going to end with the good. The bad news going into SKC, we're going to be without the services, first and foremost, of Chris Durkin. This is a new one. Chris Durkin was announced on Thursday by Olaf Melberg as having an MCL injury. So he is out indefinitely. No specifics were given, but we're expecting a longer-term recovery for Durkin. Surgery has not been mentioned yet. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens with Chris Durkin on his timeline for recovery, but he is definitely out against SKC. Also out against SKC is Giannis Horn with a hamstring injury. We've got another hamstring injury popping up. His outlook isn't said to be long-term, but he will miss SKC. Hopefully we'll find out more about him next week. And the final new one, as far as unavailability that we were not really expecting, is Edu Leuven. Non-injury, still on family leave from last week. He missed last week, required as serving his red card suspension that he earned during Philadelphia. But this is a different one. This is continuing to be out on a family leave, non-injury, non-suspension. So I think we all know what that likely means. And all we can say is we wish Edu Leuven our best. We wish Edu and Alona Leuven our best from Flyover Footy, from City fans. We are praying for you. We hope everything is okay. And we can't wait to see Edu Leuven back on the field, rejoining his teammates. We know how much he's needed, but we know he's needed there more. So that's it for the new stuff. We still have Roman Berkey out. We still have Thomas Totland out. We still have Rasmus Alm out. Jake Girdwood-Reich is likely questionable, and he's trending in the right direction as he's rejoined training last week. could be available to see some time this weekend. We'll have to wait and see. Jay Reed is still out, and Jay Reed is progressing, though. He's doing individual leg drills, individual skill drills with his foot. So I haven't seen him run, but I have seen him outside of the training room doing some of those skill drills. We do have some good news after that. So, Michael Wenzel is also likely questionable with his leg. I think of all those players, Jake Reich is most likely going to be the option to play. But there is some good news and good prognosis on Roman Berkey and Thomas Totland that we have to say. So the original timeline puts Roman Berkey out 2 more weeks, but he returned to training last week, and Olaf actually said he's good to go as soon as his hand is cleared. So look for just maybe 1 or 2 more games, possibly, of Ben Lunt before Roman Berkey is able to return. And Thomas Totland actually seems like he's trending in the right direction as well. Pulled hamstring. He was running separately from the team at training on Wednesday. We hope to see him integrated back into the team training next week, which would be a good return to play clip for him there. Hopefully see Thomas Totland around the same time as Roman Berkey. Now, the good news ahead of SKC, Cedric Toyshirt and Alfredo Morales are both going to be available for selection. They were both listed as injured after last game. Toyshirt obviously missed the last game, and Morales had picked up something, but Olaf said both will play. So if you're looking for a silver lining to all of these injuries, at least we should have Cedric Toyshirt and Alfredo Morales available. And I don't know about you guys, but that's a breath of fresh air from everything else, because we're really going to need Alfredo Morales, I think, in that midfield.
Is that true that also Perez and Silly have joined training this week from City 2?
They were in training. Yeah, they were in training on Wednesday. I personally wasn't at training on Thursday. So I'm not sure if they remain there, but I think we should touch on them later on, absolutely, on our lineups, because Cam Silly is on a City 2 contract. He plays midfield. He was in preseason with St. Louis City. So he has a lot of familiarity and obviously trust from the staff in the front office, but he would take a short-term call-up if he were to be rostered this weekend. Miguel Perez, who has been looking good both for City 2 and just in general for training and in the preseason, he would not take a short-term loan. So he is rostered on City. He's not officially loaned down as one of the 2 off-roster homegrowns. That's Mekhi Joyner and Tyson Pierce. So Miguel Perez is definitely an option this weekend, and we may likely need him for midfield depth.
Silly been playing left back for City 2 as well, and that is extremely relevant right now. Stu, any thoughts on this laundry list of information we have here on health and availability?
Well, it's not great, obviously. But after the Austin match last week, it was nice seeing Horn was walking around the field in Adidas slides. So I took it as a good sign that it wasn't as bad as it looked initially. I mean, obviously, heart goes out to Leuven and his family, and Berkey's recovery. Do you guys remember, to skip sports slightly, 2011, Albert Pujols broke his wrist and came back, I think 12 days later, miraculous. And Berkey seems to have some of that same superstar power here. But I mean, in an odd way, we haven't missed him as much as I think maybe you would have expected. But, MLS teams aren't built with a ton of depth, and this is definitely going to test our depth.
Indeed it will. And also, I thought I saw Wenzel dressed out for some reason on Sunday. So I imagine he's back, but I don't think we're too worried about that. One thing I forgot to mention last week, and I'm sad because I was a bit ahead of the crowd, and now people have been saying this. Jay Reed would have had playing time by now if he was healthy, as of like maybe 2 weeks ago or more. I would say 2 weeks ago it would have been pretty easy. So that's something I'm looking forward to, Jay Reed coming back and giving us some more depth on the wings. Matt, let's move on to Sporting Kansas City as we continue our information here.
Well, if you're looking to feel better about yourselves, then strap in, because if you think we have it bad right now, Sporting KC is something else right now. They are 15th and last in the Western Conference of MLS right now with 0 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw. They are also on a 2-match losing streak, having drew their 3rd game since now. Last 3 matches they had a 2-1 loss at Dallas last week after losing a 1-0 lead, 2-0 loss at home against LAFC the week prior, and a 3-3 draw at home against Minnesota the week before that. Some of the trends that have been happening for SKC on the field in the last couple of matches is they've scored first in 2 of their games and conceded first in 4. So it's kind of split, but more often than not, they have been conceding first. I do find this more susceptible, especially some of the stats and scoring over the last few games. They are susceptible to being scored on early. They have scored first later on in each of those matches that they were conceded. So they've scored at 32 and 52 minutes. They've conceded early a lot. So I mentioned, they're susceptible early. 3 minutes, 18 minutes, and 15 minutes. They've been scored against in 3 of those games. And they've had one game with 3 goals and shut out twice. Looking back on a couple of those other matches, in the 2-1 loss against Dallas, they scored at 32 and they conceded at 37 and 39. So they didn't hold a lead very long. They scored early in the game comparatively, but then they conceded pretty quick. The 2-0 loss at home against LAFC, they conceded at 18 early. That was one of those. And then 54, so right after the break. And then the Minnesota game is fascinating because they conceded at 15, 31, and 46, but they came back actually in that game. They were down 3-0, and they came back to draw with goals at 68, 72, and 80. So if you're looking for a trend for SKC, they tend to give up goals early, but they do tend to score some later on in the match. So they're a late scoring team, and they've proven themselves pretty vulnerable to early scoring. Now, they are not dealing with the same kind of health issues that we are. They're only missing, at least as of last week, they're only missing 2 players. Joaquin Fernandez, a center back, likely out with a back issue. He's a starting center back when he's on the field, so that one actually is impactful. And then Andrew Brody, who is likely out with a muscular quad injury. He's more depth. Guys, there is one massive story that I think has to be said, and we'll spend some time on that for SKC. But first, you're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you for joining us in this preview of Sporting KC. And the biggest thing you probably need to know about Sporting Kansas City going into this matchup, if you haven't seen it already, Sporting KC has fired their longtime manager, sporting director, technical director, chief soccer officer.
All of the above.
The most important person off the field in the Sporting Kansas City organization has been fired, Peter Vermes. There is a lengthy track record of issues that led up to this. Most recently, the supporters, 2 supporter groups of SKC had written a joint statement on March 30th to the club saying, quote, Peter Vermes must resign as manager. And then the next day, SKC announced that he'd been fired. But to clarify it all, the ownership had stated that that statement had nothing to do with it, but the talks about Vermes' dismissal had been occurring before that statement, and ownership hadn't even read the full statement before acting. This is a big deal, not just because it's a new manager, it's a manager being fired, and St. Louis has to deal with a potential new manager bump that could occur and is known to occur in MLS. Peter Vermes was also the longest tenured head coach in all of MLS and the 4th longest active managerial tenure in the world at 15 years, 7 months, and 24 days when he was dismissed. He had the 38th longest tenure by any soccer manager in the world since the Second World War. This man is a pillar in the Kansas soccer community. He was 251, 217, and 140. That's wins, losses, draws. So he won 251, lost 217, and drew 140 matches in his time with SKC. He won the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup in 2012, the 2013 MLS Cup, and then the 2015 and 2017 U.S. Open Cup trophies as well. But he leaves SKC in basically shambles. I mean, the organization gave him really nothing to work with as far as investment into his players, but he leaves SKC after a 13-match winless run dating back to the end of last season. We captured it as September 18th, 2024. Stu pulled that one, as well as over 190 days winless. And I think it's going to be, by the time we play them on Saturday, 198 days since they last won a match. So there's a lot at stake to keep that going by St. Louis and push that over the 200 mark. In his place, though, and this is where it gets kind of interesting when you talk about a new manager bounce. In his place, the interim manager of SKC is Kerry Zavanyan. He's been with the club since 2000 as a player and since 2009 as an assistant. He's been with the organization longer than Peter Vermes. So when you're talking about a new manager bounce or new tactics, new ideas, a new way of play, you're not going to get it with Kerry Zavanyan. At least you shouldn't, because he's taking over the reins with so little runtime. He has been a Vermes guy through and through during Vermes' entire tenure. So I don't know. My personal opinion is that we're likely to see more. And I like what Henry Kessler said on the Thursday press conference, that sometimes with new managers, tactics go out the window and you don't rely as much on what you had been doing or what you plan for. It's more you play for the feel, you play for the new manager. And I think that's what we have to watch out for is the emotional aspect of it and the players trying to grit it out more than trying to employ their tactics, which SKC has been pretty dismal on. So before we go into the play styles, should we start off by saying SKC has the edge based on the new coach potential bump, or maybe it's their home game, the lack of injuries they have compared to City? Is there a reason? I mean, we'll get to what the odds are later, but like Phil, is there a reason why we should be saying SKC has the advantage here?
Oh, I don't think so. I guess a bump can happen no matter what. The players are going to be out to up their game to make a statement to cement their spot in the starting 11. And I mean, we saw we saw Hack take over, and the lineup changed. It wasn't a lot of changes, but some guys cemented their place in the rest of the season. So there is something to fight for, and I think every player is going to see that. Every professional player, especially, knows that they got to step it up and be, they gotta be a killer out there in order to cement their space for their family and for their career. So, I think there could be a bump, but I do think St. Louis should take care of them. I think we're going to talk about the rest later, so I don't want to go on and on about that. But Stu, I've been really excited to ask you about Vermes because, like every good St. Louis fan, you kind of keep one eye on that rival over there. You'll kind of keep me up to date on some of the latest happenings of Sporting Kansas City. So I know you have some thoughts on Vermes, and I imagine they're not all bad.
Well, here's a nice little bit of trivia to start off with. Zivanyan was actually traded for Vermes when they were both MLS players in 1997. So that's a little interesting interplay between them. No, but Vermes, I mean, he's a legend. He's an MLS legend. He's a Sporting Kansas City legend. He took over when they were still the Wiz.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time. They were still playing at Arrowhead when he was the manager. So he even predates Children's Mercy Park. He's a huge figure, and I take pleasure in him losing and the club being miserable over there. But as a legend for a club, you kind of hate. I mean, I would hate being in their position that someone sticks around that long, that he really kind of poisons the well. But in 5 years or whatever, time will heal all wounds, and he'll go back to KC. But to just a little bit of how toxic the environment is in that club right now, front office, whatever you want to call it, is Benny Feilhaber, who's another Sporting Kansas City legend, who was the Sporting KC 2 coach for, I think, 2 or 3 years post-retirement. He approached Sasha Kljestan to sign for Des Moines Menace so he could play against Sporting Kansas City 2 in the Open Cup and beat them. That's how toxic that club is right now, at least for some individuals. So, and I would hate to think that we're the underdogs against a club that hasn't won a home game or a game at all in 198 days. So if we lose this one, I mean, I'm going to be pretty peeved. But you never know. They're at home and the manager bounce. They're going to get they're going to have their tails up too, because they want to beat us. And whatever Sporting fans are present will want us to be humiliated too.
Yep. I think you said it much better than I did there. It's a good way to put it. One last thing I want to say about Vermes is that he's, obviously he's been around a long time. We've beaten that to death, but thinking about, they started as like team try. They've always kind of been team try. Like he always gets his players to just run through a wall for him, like whether it was in a nice way or a mean way. But he does, he gets them to perform better than you would expect. And I think we experienced that in season 1 for St. Louis City, right? Their return from the depths of the table in that season was impressive and unimpressive in the same time. But, they used to just be team try. And then when it became cool to possess the ball for a little while, when MLS tried to become a pretty soccer league, or at least a more pretty soccer league, Vermes was leading the way on that. They became a possession team until the rest of MLS kind of caught up, and he just didn't have the money to maintain that style of play, and they went back to some more of their blue collar play, but they still possess the ball quite a bit, or they did in the last 2 years. They were still doing that. So Vermees has been around a long time. I think he could have lasted longer if he'd given up one or other of the sporting director or coach jobs. I feel like he could still kind of be there. I would like to see him focus on coaching and let someone else bring in players. It seems like players has been a problem there. So, respect and hate for Vermees both. I think that's appropriate from a St. Louis City fan and St. Louis FC fan for that matter. So, I think we should move on, guys, if you're all right with that. We're going to start digging in deeper. We're calling this Tale of the Tape. Before we do, I should say, you're listening to Flyover Footy on the big 550 KTRS. Matt, take it away. Let's hear about what we're going to see from St. Louis and Kansas City as they face off.
6 matches in, you start to see some trends, despite the fact that Olaf Melberg does not take the seasons in blocks of games like Bradley Carnell used to, and he views this as a game-by-game league. Sporting KC has shown strength in coming back from losing positions. This is most notable in the Minnesota game, where they came back from 3-0 down to tie the game. They do like to work on their clearances, their counters, their recoveries. They're good at stealing the ball. And this plays into the fact that they're more of a pressing team this season than we've seen before in a lot of ways. They still like to possess a lot, but they're pretty low in PPDA, passes per defensive action, a lot lower than St. Louis, as a matter of fact. So this is a club that will get in your face a little more. They do like to disrupt, and they're pretty skilled at individual play. They do have some high caliber players who are dangerous with goal scoring abilities, and we'll mention them here in a little bit, but the sum of their parts have not been great so far, but the individual talent is definitely there. I mentioned that they're pretty good at coming back from losing position, so don't count them out if you get a lead. They are not good at protecting a lead. They have gone up twice this season in their 6 games, and they have lost the lead both times. They're also not good at defending the counterattack. So they like to possess the ball, but they're not great in transition in preventing goals. Some of their goals have been scored against them, most notably in the transition in the counter. So that does bode well for St. Louis as well, and what we've seen them try to do. The style so far of Sporting KC this season, they do like to possess the ball, control the game in the opposition's half. They like to play with width because they usually do a 4-3-3, or they've ran out 3 center backs a couple of times this season, but they do like to get width. Even if they have 4 in the back, they will stretch the field wide. So it's going to be an interesting battle to see in that front, because both teams will probably have battles that occur on the wings. They like to play down both sides. So they're not favoring one side over the other, where St. Louis, with Thomas Totland in the game, for instance, tends to favor the right-hand side. It's not really the case for SKC. They go down both wings almost equally. They do like to control the long ball as well. So they will try switches. They will send the ball in the air, and they will attempt a lot of crosses. They will play aggressive. So this PPDA number is legit. They'll control the ball when they have it, and they'll be happy to work the ball around in possession. But when they don't have possession, they will not let you pass very much without trying to make a movement on the ball. St. Louis, on the other hand, St. Louis doesn't have a whole lot of strengths that you can look to in the sense of goal scoring. So when you look at what they're best at this season, it's free kick opportunities. Edu Leuven's no longer an option in this game, but St. Louis is still skilled at creating those free kick opportunities, drawing fouls in the opposition half, and that's always a good opportunity to generate really quality chances. They are good at protecting the lead. In the few games that they've actually gotten a lead, those 2 games, they've maintained both of them. Mentioned that it's kind of been a tale of 2 teams in the sense of 4 games scoreless, 2 games where you've scored and kept the lead. So that just kind of highlights the importance of, if St. Louis can get a lead early, then both the combination of SKC's inability to, other than the Minnesota game, come back, and then St. Louis's ability to protect a lead, you got to like your chances. So starting off strong is going to be something St. Louis has to do in order to do that. Weaknesses from St. Louis, we know they don't finish well. They don't defend set pieces well. They've had the goals scored against them in that way, and longer shots. They're defensively sound, especially in their box and low, but they give up a lot of longer shots. And SKC has burned us in the past with some of these longer shots. The individual talent has won out. So what has St. Louis's style been? Well, long balls, crosses. They play in their own half a lot. It's the 5-man back line, the complaints about the defensive-minded lineups that run out, the inability to keep the ball in the attacking third for periods of time. unless basically the opposition gives it to you, like Austin did. And that was a complaint, or at least a storyline to follow out of Austin, is Austin was willing to do that. So what are we going to see against a possession-heavy team against SKC? Are we going to see a return to where St. Louis has fared strong against possession-based teams like LA Galaxy and Seattle? There's not a huge track record of Olaf in MLS, but there's a few matches that you could point to that may mirror what we're going to see against SKC and what SKC likes to do. And it has been positive for St. Louis so far. The LA Galaxy and Seattle Sounders matches, the two matches we've won, you can argue that possession-wise and how the opposition plays, it's most similar to those two teams than to anything else. So I mentioned SKC likes to press. I mentioned that St. Louis likes to play in their own zone a lot. One other thing with SKC is they've taken 61 shots this season, and they've only scored 4 goals. They average an absolutely abysmal 0.077 xG per shot. And as a baseline for a fair expected goals per shot, we're talking 0.1. And they're averaging 0.07. Really bad shot opportunities that they take. So if you're complaining about the chances created, not just the finishing for St. Louis, but the chances created and quality chances, you should see what's going on with SKC, because it's even worse. They've taken 0 shots with a greater than 0.3 xG. St. Louis has 6 of these shots, but have only scored 1 goal. So they're not getting in any kind of position to take really great quality shots. The fewest shots in a game over the past 3 for SKC has been 9. So they don't take quality shots ever in the first 6 games, but they do like to get into around the penalty area to take shots. So it's that long shot opportunity that they get into. And I think that's going to put some pressure on Ben Lunt on the defense to block and clear, because this doesn't seem like a match where SKC is going to be able to get the ball in to high areas deep against St. Louis and get really good, high quality shot opportunities. It's going to be one of those worldy type shots if they score against St. Louis, unless something catastrophic happens. And on the St. Louis side, defensively stout, yada, yada, yada. We talked about it before. The fan base is souring on this mindset. They want to see more attacking. They want to see more quality shots. In the month of March, St. Louis allowed the fewest goals too, but they're tied for 4th in the fewest goals scored. Their ability to dictate play is absolutely in question right now. Olaf Melberg continues to make statements after the game about team in some way, shape, or form not doing what they talked about doing pregame. Talks about the narrative of Austin allowing them to possess after dropping back into a low block. I'm even hearing that the front office is getting slightly frustrated, not only with the performance, but with the perception and how it can be fixed about the attack. You do need individual players to finish these opportunities. And I'll talk about this in the wind down in the XG shot stats and looking what that looks like. But no matter if they're actually getting into position to have a decent shot opportunities, the volume has not been there for quality, because you're running out 5 center backs in a single match. You're running out 8 defenders total. And these aren't recipes for long-term success. So looking ahead to what our lineups are going to be, that's going to be an interesting story. We know we have more attackers on the roster. We know we're capable of rolling out more, even with all these injuries. So I got to ask, why aren't we seeing more attacking players from St. Louis City?
Yeah, I think we should dwell on that, because I do think it was a good press conference. I do think St. Louis's press corps did a good job asking the hard questions. So I think we should talk about that specifically. I think we got some answers from Olaf, but let's kind of start with Stuart. Like, what do you think? What do you think needs to happen? I think in the press conference, for example, Olaf said, we looked really good in the last 20, 25 minutes. And he said some other things that were good, but I thought that was one thing that was kind of funny to hear, that was the most aggressively attacking 20, 25 minutes that St. Louis has had all season by far. And it didn't feel like he wanted to do that. Now, maybe he did, but it happened. It was good, right? How did you feel about that, Stuart?
I mean, it was a tough one because that was right after the weather delay occurred in Austin. So we were coming back after that. Klaus came on immediately at the restart, 67th, 68th minute. And I mean, Austin, they weren't really making a whole lot of attempts to score at that point. Really, I think the craziness started the most when Baumgartel came on, which To me, it's a fairly big sign of desperation if you're putting your center back, hoof it to the big guy up front. I thought he did, you know, pretty good job. He directed and caused chaos.
Hmm.
And as Matt Doyle called it in his recap on Monday, he called the last 25 minutes the tactics free zone of the match.
Mhm.
And yeah, no, I think that's apt. But it didn't seem like there was as much of a plan, which is not really. Again, it might be a perception thing, but from my perception, that's not what I want to see from a whole match from the team. But of course, that deflection goes in, or the ball that's at
Hmm.
Baumgartel's feet or Klaus's feet in the last 2 minutes of the match. If one of them pokes that away, our conversation is entirely different. It's talking about Klaus getting the monkey off his back, breaking his scoreless streak, or how amazing it is that Baumgartels are new second choice striker or whatever.
Well, luckily, Toy back, so hopefully that's not going to be necessary. They did also ask, why didn't you put in someone like Glover? They kind of implied it. Actually, I wouldn't say they asked, so they didn't force his hand on that. And the answer was very easy, that there was a City 2 game the same day, in which neither Glover nor Joyner started. So
Yeah.
we can be a little bit mean here, but I wanted to kind of ask you, Matt. Like, I feel like with Carnell, once teams adjusted to St. Louis's press, they realized they could bunker in, and the plan B of possessing the ball and not being able to score in the first 60 minutes became a problem, right? And so
Yeah.
to me, like, I'm being a bit haunted by that thought. I'm totally fine with plan A being defend out. Like, I'm really impressed with what our defense is able to pull off. But if you can't score, or if you give up the first goal, you can't go a whole season not doing that.
Yeah.
What do you do in those situations? You need a plan B. And in my opinion, plan B needs, perhaps, I'm asking you, Matt, do you think Olaf learned, number one, we need a better plan B, or we need to work harder on our plan B? Or number two, it looked a lot better with people like Ostrak in there, even Klaus, who didn't look amazing. Someone like that would be helpful in those situations. What did you think? Do you think Olaf learned from this? Do you think we're going to see a progression from what happened against Austin, which I feel like was slightly embarrassing?
I do think he learned, and I think he pointed twice, post game and during this week, to the combination of Conrad Wallem and Celio Pompeu. And
Mm.
I think he learned a little bit of what Celio can offer in a game to change things up. The state of the game against Austin is where I have kind of trouble pulling too much away from it, because you're trailing, you're chasing the game in the entirety of the second half. You have the weather delay, and the tactics free zone is apt. So I really struggle with saying, with really buying into Olaf saying we did great the last 20, 25 minutes. We need to replicate that, because the last 20, 25 minutes of that game are never going to be replicable to start a game. You can't do it. You're not going to be down. The other team's not going to be bunkering. You're not going to be having fresh legs coming off. You're not going to be given, St. Louis City is not going to be given 76% possession to
And
start a
Twitter
game.
needs to understand that, right? Like, that's not a good way to start the game if that's not what you're built to do. And we're not built to do that, right? I
Right.
think people need to understand the chaos is situational, right?
Exactly. And that's why I reiterate this tactics free zone. And I like that mantra. I like that phrasing and title, because it's appropriate. The tactics go out the window. You're trying desperately to chase a goal, and you're doing different things because you have those different kind of players on the field based on what the opposition is giving you. So I don't like the defense of Austin was giving us the ball, and so we had to play like that. I like the idea of it does give you a plan B for certain scenarios, though. So I don't want to say we need to take what happened in the last 25. We need to take Klaus, Salio, Wallem, Ostrak, all in the same lineup. We need to start the game with them because they did so well to end the game. But what I do like to say is, if you're in a game state and you need that kind, or you're facing an opposition where that they're going to bunker down, maybe it's a Minnesota United that's done it before. Maybe you start the game like that because you think the game state's going to start in a way where the opposition's doing something that you've excelled in these last 25 minutes against Austin. That's fine. That does help give you a plan B. So unlocking that mindset of what a Saleo and a Wallem can do, what an Ostrak can do in certain game states, should be in your back pocket either game planning for specific opponents, or you damn sure better be ready if an opposition shows you that in the second half. Like, these are things you need to, this is how you develop plan Bs. You develop them on the fly sometime based on what you see and what quality you have on the team. Olaf says before that he's not happy with the quality we have in some of our touches and possession and overall buildup, but you have to take what you see on the field and improve on it, yes, but also see what works and save it for an appropriate time to deploy it.
And what I want to even take that a little further is what I'm looking for here is intentionality. And, even, I mean, don't admit it to the press. Acknowledgement of mistakes. The fact that, in the first couple games, the subs came very late. And they were at times extremely conservative. Now we saw an over adjustment, a chaotic adjustment, tactics free zone is apt, of course. Now I want to see, like, okay, what can we put together intentionally? You're a coach, right? We don't want these random chaotic moments to happen. We should have something built in so that the players have this bookmark. Oh, we practice this. We're down a goal. We're in this situation. These guys are going to come in. We all know each other. We know how to play in an aggressively attacking situation where we need a goal or two. And we're going to shift gears, and we're going to go right back to this thing that we know, this thing we practice in training, and it needs to be that, right? And it can't be conservative. It needs to be more attacking than we saw. It needs to be tactics free zone, but with tactics, with intentionality. So that's what I'd like to see going forward. I don't think we can continue to see what happened in that game. Different phases, all were bad, right? We can stop there. Stu, any last comments before we move on to the lineup?
Oh man, just what do you guys think it would take for Olaf to change his formation if it, injuries dictated a need to do so? He seems pretty reluctant to even consider the idea, and we're facing considerable injuries. I'm not saying for this match. I'm just saying in broad general.
I think he's right. He even addressed that. He's like, I'll play 5 strikers if it calls for it, or if they're if they're in, what am I looking for? If they're playing well, right?
In form.
Thank you. He seems to really, really like inform over tactics or attacking duties and that kind of thing, which is fine until it's not, I suppose. Go ahead.
If you remember in preseason, he told us the formation will be dictated by the quality of the players and the quality on the field.
He repeated that.
Yes, and he stuck with it. So that's, I think, until we see significant injuries that or players outperforming others in training, they're going to have to force his hand to change the formation because he likes who he has doing what he has, and that's kind of a reason Kyle Hebert remains in the lineup. That's obviously a player who has found favor.
It's fair in some ways, but time will tell what the results will tell us. Matt, let's start with your predicted starting 11, and we'll key in.
All right, Ben Luton in net, 3 center backs: Joachim Nilsson, Henry Kessler, Kyle Hebert. The left wing back is Conrad Wallum. The right wing back is Akil Watts. And my central midfielders are Tomas Ostrak and Alfredo Morales, with Marcel Hartl as the 10. And my attacking duo is, it's almost pull a couple players out of a hat of about 4. I'm going to go with Salio and Toyshirt. I'm not super pumped about it because I'm not sure the likelihood of Toyshirt having the legs to start after just getting back from his minor injury. So Betcher could start with Salio, but I wonder, the multiple times that Olaf has stated Salio and Wallum, kind of feel like he's going to give it a go to start.
Well said. Stu, what do you think?
Actually, I'm making a change on the fly that I'll get to with something Matt just talked about there, but I'm going with Lunt in goal, and then Wallum and Watts as wingbacks, Nielsen, Kessler, and Hebert, Morales and Ostrak, Hartl, and then Celio starting instead of Toichert and Klaus up top. And part of the reason why is I'm just looking at the bench and who we have off the bench if we're starting this lineup and who we have. And having Betcher on the bench and Toichert on the bench just seems a lot more favorable than if we're in the 75th minute and we have to plug in Klaus, who off the bench hasn't shown too much. So that's who I'm going to go with, largely because of who we have on the bench. And, Silly gets a call up, or Perez hopefully will at least travel.
One of the things I just saw in the presser that Olaf said on Thursday was that Miguel Perez was asked, and where does Miguel Perez fit in with him? And Olaf said, quote, he hasn't been involved in training. He's only trained a couple of times. So I don't think we're considering that at the moment from him from the start. So, we have some other options we're looking at.
It could go on for hours on that one. Let's skip it for now. I have no disagreements. Matt has convinced me with his lineup. I'll just say that Klaus, if he was going to start, that Austin game was the game for him to start, and he didn't. And I saw up close what he looked like walking over to warm up for the game. I was almost surprised they pulled him in.
Yeah.
Not looking happy. Something's wrong. I would love to see him score and get confidence and be happy and get playing time and see a renewed Klaus that belongs on this team long term. That's my goal and my hope, but I don't think he's going to start. So I'll just say that. But I would love to see what Celio can do with his start. He's earned a look, and I think Kansas City's a good place to start with that. Matt, we've added in Vegas odds. So let's start with Vegas odds, and we'll all contribute our thoughts in a non-betting fashion.
Yeah, just to give people an idea of who's actually favored in this objectively from those folks who do it professionally. The odds makers favor SKC, but the likeliest outcome by a pretty wide margin is a draw. SK, yeah. So yeah, actually, hang on, I take that back. The odds makers favor St. Louis in this one at plus 220, and SKC is plus 115. So they think the likeliest outcome is that it's a draw followed by a St. Louis win followed by SKC win. So shows you how much I love betting that I
yeah, right. I don't know these things either.
Yeah,
what do you think, Matt?
Because of that, I do think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. We haven't yet won at Children's Mercy. The odds makers might like a draw the most, followed by St. Louis, followed by SKC, but I still haven't seen enough to say I'm confident pulling us off with a win yet. The way we've finished has given me so many question marks so far. I would love if we did, but I'm going to go 1-1 draw.
Stu?
I'm going to go 2-1. I'll be the ever the optimist. But I got to throw in something real quick. So there are a lot of tickets still remaining that people are selling in Kansas for this match. So away section for this match is 122, 123, and 124. So if you're a traveling fan, try to get tickets near there.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm just going to say 2-0 St. Louis win. I think they get kicked in the butt this week, and maybe we see a little bit more aggression on the attack. That's my hope and dream. And if we figure something out against Kansas City and then things look good from there on, that's like the best case scenario, right? I'd love to see it.
Right.
All right. Thank you to everyone who is listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS. We're Flyover Footy. Hope you feel more prepared for this game against our rival in Kansas City. Enjoy the game if you're watching it. Be safe if you're traveling. Either way, go City. Thanks for listening, everyone. All right. We went long, fellas.
Yep.
But that's KTRS's problem.
I've been giving them like 45, 46 minutes past couple of weeks, and I haven't heard anything. As long as we actually give them the file, because that's been my biggest problem.
I've been good since Jamie took over for some reason. So,
are we going to actually have a wind down this week?
I'm going to crash pretty soon, but I hope you guys hit the Open Cup hard. That was
why don't you stick
amazing.
around for like 5-10 minutes, Stu? Because I'd love for you to lead the way on that. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, and then I can just slip out. I'm actually trying to find the draw. I was looking at it today. Did you guys look at the Open Up? Yeah, the third round.
Did they do it already?
Open
I
Cup.
can't believe I missed it.
Yeah, it was today at 1 p.m.
Day.
Yeah,
I'll grab a beer and we'll get this over with for you, Stu.
Yep.
All right, I'll throw it up in the chat.
Oh, he threw like text. You threw text based in the chat, in our private chat here.
Hilarious.
Jeez. I thought you'd throw a link out there.
No, I'm just if anyone's active on Reddit, if you go to the USL subreddit, someone posted a link to the YouTube video of the draw, and they had the actual matchup. So there's some pretty interesting ones there, and I mean, third round's supposed to be a random draw from what I understand, but it does seem like they're still going
seems pretty regional
regional
based to me.
Yeah. Like if you're going to say it's random, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't believe you.
Yeah, and there's some matchups here that I don't know where St. Louis would fit in because St. Louis joins.
Well, hold on, Stu. You're basically doing the show. So let's hit record and then let's go into this. Ready? Here we go.
All right.
Welcome everyone to the wind down. Oh no.
Almost lost that one.
It was like a 3-phase.
That one almost did not work. We are rusty on the wind down.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it?
Yikes.
Well, Stu, you have done a little digging on the Open Cup, and I want to spend some time on it before we lose you because obviously we're big fans of it. And this round, it's looking tasty to me. I'm so excited, even just looking at these matchups. So, Stu, take it away with your thoughts on the draw for the third round.
Oh, there's going to be some really fun matches. The second round just ended yesterday. So second round had a couple cup sets, but the biggest one of this round that I think everyone following was just kind of crazy about is El Farolito, who are a amateur club from San Francisco who are sponsored by a San Francisco burrito chain. And they're a club that they've been around for almost 40 years, I believe. So they've been around for quite a while I think they're a different name in the 90s. But if anyone's on Reddit, on the USL subreddit, there's a link to the YouTube video of the draw from today at 1:00 for the third round. And someone hopefully put a kind of formatted out all the matches on that thread. So there's going to be some really interesting ones. You have Charlotte Independence, which is the USL club in Charlotte. There's Charlotte FC in MLS and Charlotte Independence in USL. And they're playing North Carolina FC, Portland Hearts of Pine versus Rhode Island FC. Yeah, great name, incredible kits. If anyone is a kit lover out there, they are gorgeous, gorgeous crest.
And that was a cup set, right? It was
that was a cup set. They had a chip. They beat Hartford Athletic, and there was a chip in the 116th minute, something like that, to draw even, and then they, I believe, won on penalties. And they're managed by Bobby Murphy, former City 2 manager. So there's a little connection there. Cool. The Chattanooga Derby, whatever you want to call it, was last night, and that was Chattanooga Red Wolves of USL versus Chattanooga FC of MLS Next Pro, and that had, I think, 12,000 people in attendance. So at Finley Stadium, that's the first time they've ever played, and there's a long backstory there that we can get into another time, or if you guys have 30 minutes to get into now. But basically, bad blood between the ownership and the USL club kind of tried to kill off the MLS club, MLS Next Pro club, who were amateurs at the time. Anyways, that ended with Red Wolves winning in a penalty shootout. I think both goalies almost came to blows. It was pretty feisty. They're 2 40-year-old keepers still got it, except I don't think they really stopped much. But at the end of the match, one of the Red Wolves players, who is a former City 2 player,
goalkeeper,
tried to plant the Red Wolves flag at the center circle in Chattanooga's home stadium, and that almost caused a fight. So that was pretty fun.
Who was that?
Eric? Eric
Kinsler?
Kinsler.
Man, that was such a
Kinsler.
bad decision for a human being to do. It was hard to watch.
I
I
mean,
dug it.
the
Go
emotions
for
are
it.
really high.
Yeah.
You can tell the players hate each other, the fans hate each other, the front offices hate each other. That's proper football or whatever the hell you want to
To be
say.
fair, like
it
the
was great
ghosts of
entertainment.
Chickamauga like totally felt that battle. You know what I mean? Civil War joke there. Fighting over a
It's too
flag in
highbrow for me.
Chattanooga, like that's a time-honored tradition, I suppose. Sorry, go ahead, Sue. I keep cutting you off.
So just looking at these pods, trying to figure out where St. Louis would fit in here, because the winner of the third round will face St. Louis City SC at Energizer Park on, I believe, May 7th
6th
or
or
8th.
7th.
6th or
Tuesday,
7th.
Wednesday,
Okay,
yep.
thank you. If we go off of regional matchups, which it's supposed to be a random draw, but they're definitely potted up for the second round or third round. Union Omaha versus San Antonio, that one would make sense. Colorado Switchbacks versus One Knoxville, that would make sense.
Detroit, Westchester?
Yeah, maybe Detroit City FC hosting them. That would
really
be
would.
fun. I personally despise them for USL reasons, and their fan base is really obnoxious, but
Supporter group
they
is
do
the
travel
worst.
extremely well.
I would
Yeah.
I would loathe the banter that would happen because of
It
that.
could get rough.
That the supporter group for Detroit City is just an absolute nightmare, and not
They're
in a
extreme.
good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Columbus Crew 2 and Detroit City would probably be the most likely and spiciest matchup of the next round if they advance.
Louisville?
But
Louisville's
Indy 11
possible.
versus Miami, Louisville's possible. That would
Also.
be great. Miami versus Indy 11. I don't really care about the Miami FC, but Indy 11 would be a lot of fun. Rowdies are a fun team.
How fun
But-
would it be if we got Sacramento?
Sacramento or El
Well,
Farolino
El Farolino,
hosting the
the Burrito
Bowl?
Boys would always be fun, but
Yeah.
Sacramento in general, like the MLS, like the two expansion teams,
Yeah.
right? Because we were fighting with Sacramento for so long for an expansion in MLS. They got it, and they fumbled it. Their owner just up and left them, and so
Yeah,
they had
that'd
to
be
stay.
funny.
Yeah, I think that would be a pretty hilarious and kind of like deep layered matchup that we'd have to go back into the years ago to look at.
And one that could continue if USL gets Division 1, you know what I mean? Like it could be really ironic, but also
I would also
Burrito
like
Boys versus Ravioli Boys is like too good to pass up in
this.
some ways.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The marketing department for City would have a field day.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else, Stu? What are you thinking?
Oh,
Do you have
man.
a favorite? Like, who would you
No.
love to see? I guess you kind of said it, and like Detroit would be pretty crazy.
Detroit, their away fans would make it fun. And I think our fans who aren't really aware of the U.S. Open Cup or haven't interacted a lot with the lower leagues would really kind of enjoy that interaction, what they bring. Louisville City, fun. Columbus Crew 2, the Capybaras, they're a fun squad. And they have, what are they called? Not Cappy Crew. What's their supporters section called? It's a really great pun that
they
they
bought
have.
into the capybara thing.
Yeah, they are all in on that. The ones I really wouldn't care for would be, I wouldn't care for Tacoma Defiance. They're kind of a fun squad, but they don't bring a lot of spark to me.
I don't want any MLS Next Pro team. I want a USL team.
Either. Yeah.
I want a championship or a League One team. I actually would like it if the Crew 2 played Detroit City and then beat them, so that Detroit City would have to deal with losing to a Next Pro team.
Oh God.
I don't want them. I don't want them to play an MLS team. I want them to play a Next Pro team. The Next Pro team kick their asses.
I think I just got heartburn.
I mean, that's the MLS Next Pro team I would root for against a USL team. Like,
well, Detroit City beat Crew
Yeah.
in the U.S. Open Cup
know.
2 years
That
ago.
is fun.
So
this would be hilarious.
Detroit City really is proud about that. So
Yeah.
if they lost to Crew 2, that would just be chef's kiss.
Telling ya.
Beautiful.
I would actually like to, if we Chattanooga Red Wolves could be good. You get Eric Kisner
Oh, yeah.
against his former organization, like that have a layer to it. It's kind of geographical.
Driving them into the ground would be fun, but I'm worried that wouldn't happen.
Layers to why we would want to beat them. I mean, you've got to find some stories where you can get them here.
Oh yeah, and I think there's a story no matter who we get, right? It's gonna be fun, and that's what you love about the Open Cup.
Indy 11 against us as one of the newer expansion teams versus one of the future expansion teams.
Possibly, yeah. Aiden Stanley is there, killing it still.
Oh yeah, and for those who don't know, Aiden Stanley played left back for was a right back, left back for St. Louis FC as a academy player, and then he went to Duke for 2 years, and then he's been a professional since, I guess, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, so he's taking a different approach, but yeah, there are a lot of former players, familiar faces around here. Union Omaha have Max Schneider, former City 2 player, playing on them. We already mentioned Red Wolves there. I looked at Defiance. They don't have anyone that I recognized. But don't be surprised if you look at a few of these rosters. You'll be like,
we need to bring Brian in from Soccer Tracker. That's what we need to do. Get a full list.
Yeah, he knows them all.
One thing I'll say, Stu, though, is if we can encourage folks, because we're wanting everybody to watch these, Paramount Plus will have all these games starting the middle of April. April 15th, 16th is when these games play?
Yeah, I believe so.
So Paramount Plus is going to be where you find all of these games. Every single game Stu just listed will be on Paramount Plus, April 15th and 16th. So tune in for that. And then the winners of that match will have the potential. We'll find out later that week. I think the draw is going to be on the 17th of April for St. Louis's match on May 6th or 7th. Tickets are available now. If you haven't gotten your Open Cup tickets, get them because it's GA in the stadium. $40 plus fees get you a GA ticket, and you can sit anywhere you want in the stadium. So it's a different approach that they took this year for the U.S. Open Cup, being the second time we've hosted at City Park, Energizer Park. I think tickets are probably going to go a little harder once we have an opponent. We can start getting closer to the match, but either way, it's going to be a good time. So make sure you at least have that on your radar to get tickets for that one and watch who our opponent could be on April 15th and 16th.
It is so cool that they did general admission on that. And what are they, $30? There might be a fee on top of that. Is that right?
I think it says, the one I'm looking at right now says $40 each, including fees.
Great. Yeah. I'm glad they said that because I think some people were surprised at first. But, one of the cheaper ways you can see St. Louis City, and it's such a cool tournament. But I think I'm basically inviting all my friends, all my neighbors, and we're going to form a group, and we're going to stand in line for a long time with at least one beer and just make it like a celebration, which is what it deserves, in my opinion. But it's a good one to bring the kids to as well. So I just hope that whole stadium fills up because it's such a good opportunity to see St. Louis and get close if you get there early enough, and a seat you can't afford. So many cool opportunities here. I'm glad the club is going in on some of the marketing things. I was a little worried after some of the things were said on that City Voice episode. But they're putting effort in, and I'm glad. And I want to try to bump it as well, get people there, as should everyone listening to this podcast. Honestly, we're all nerds here, and we should all be putting the work in for this one. I'm an Open Cup evangelist. Stu, anything before we want to go?
I think you guys covered it. I'm excited to hear the rest of the wind down tomorrow. But on that note, go City, and good night.
Thanks, Stu. Yes, Stu. Have a good one. Anything else from you on the Open Cup?
I mentioned the thing I wanted to get in, which was the Paramount Plus deal. And I think that's great that they're going to have that for the next couple of years.
I think it's a 2-year deal is what I was going to say there. Yeah.
Starting in the third round of this year and next, all U.S. Open Cup matches are going to be streaming on Paramount Plus, with select matches available on CBS Sports Network and the Golazo Network. And the Golazo Network's free. So if you don't have Paramount Plus, but you do have a streaming device like a TV or a Fire Stick or Roku, anything like that, look up what are those things? Pluto TV, the Roku channels, it's those streaming channels. They have the CBS Sports Golazo Network, and that will have the U.S. Open Cup now in what we just talked about. So you'll be able to watch at least a match for free with just an internet connection and a streaming device.
I want to also say that, U.S. soccer is really, I don't know. I was going to say something bad. They've done a terrible job in the past with this tournament in a lot of ways, but it seems like this year is the year they're trying to kind of put some effort into it. And I think that's also why MLS was trying to make sure that this year kind of didn't happen. And last year. So anyway, it is happening. They're putting some more effort into it. That Paramount deal is massive, but also the prize is up to $1 million now, the total prize. So
Yep.
The winner will win $600,000 of actual cash. We're not talking about GAM here.
No.
And then the runner-up will get $250,000, and then there's more prizes for the top winner in Division 2, Division 3, and below. I think all those get $50,000 each, which to a D3, D4 club, that is quite a bit of money. So that's like, all of a star player's salary, or maybe half a star player's salary in Division 2. So pretty good. And I think that's a good start. Long way to go, but it's improving, right? And so it's up to, in my opinion, it's up to us as fans to kind of help keep that history alive, that tradition alive. And so I'm going to keep pumping it, get used to it. You're going to get sick of it, but that's enough for me today, unless you have something else, Matt.
Well, you mentioned the prize money, and I think that was changed this year. The fact that $600,000 goes to the winner, the runner-up receives $250,000. It might sound like small potatoes, but I think that doubles what the winner had been getting, and it actually makes the U.S. Open Cup winner take home more than the MLS Cup winner. The MLS Cup winner takes home a reported $300,000. That's what you get as pure prize money for winning the cup. Now there's going to be incentives and bonuses for players and coaches and all that stuff. But like as a team, to give the team and the amount of cash, you now earn more money by winning the US Open Cup than you do MLS Cup.
Jason Faust says, I didn't think about this. It's true. El Farolito already won $50,000.
How huge is that for their organization? That's part of the magic of this cup, is that the prize money that these amateur and then really lower league teams play and win when they win these matches as they progress. So it's not just a Cinderella story cup sets. It's legitimately like this is operating money so they can remain viable as a club going forward. Like some of these amateur teams, especially, they rely on this, or it would make their entire existence easier to just be a soccer team, to win one single match. So that's fantastic to see. And that's just an extra reason why you want to root for this, because more soccer teams in America is better for everybody. You can't question that. More teams isn't better for soccer in this country.
Jerry Hayes also says supporter section is a separate GA ticket from the other general admission. That's good to know. Matt, how many MLS first teams are in this mix? Jerry also asked that. I can't remember. Is it 8?
Oh, no, it's 16 now, I think. Okay. They made the big deal this past offseason of raising the amount of MLS teams who were in the US Open Cup, but it was after they lowered it to 8 last year, and then now I think they're raising it to 16.
Jason's impressed with that I pronounced his name right. Jason, I'm going to go to Germany in August or September, I'm hoping. And so I've been on Duolingo hard, man. I gave you the full German pronunciation on that one.
Well done.
Which I have some, I want to ask, if I ever get to talk to Toy Shirt, I gotta, do you remember asking that question, Matt, about how to pronounce his name? And he said Toy Shirt, but then he like looked at another German American on our squad and giggled.
He looked at Timo Baumgartel.
Thank you. I thought it was someone who was German, and I was like, something's going on. And the more German I study, the more I'm like, I think you could kind of say either, but Americans don't say the K version, as well.
I just don't have the ability.
It's just easier for him to be like, just say Toy Shirt. Stop trying to say it
the closest thing.
You're not going to get it. And so I think they kind of had a giggle about, I'm going to give you the easy version because you can't handle the hard one. So
and
that's
I honestly,
my opinion.
I honestly appreciated that more because it made me feel good about myself and that I can say it. And it was like, it was blessed by Seti himself.
Fair enough.
And I don't have to try. I don't have to be a try hard on it.
Yeah. Yeah. If we wanted to really feel bad, we could bring in, why can't I think of our German Canadian buddy's name?
Oh, Manuel Veth?
Menelveit, yeah. He
Yeah.
gives me so much crap about my German
Oh,
pronunciation.
I could just listen to him. I listen to him just talk just for the sake of listening to him
Yeah.
talk. But yeah,
Well,
16 MLS teams in the US Open Cup this year confirmed. And
awesome.
that will be the case for this year and next, because like the Paramount Plus deal, the other thing that I found noteworthy on the US Open Cup before we move on is the TV deal being for this year and next also coincides with the structure of the tournament for this year and next. So, we're riding the wave up until the 2026 World Cup. And on the other side of the World Cup, there's something that's really gonna, I don't know. It feels like seismic changes are in store for U.S. Open Cup, for U.S. soccer on the other side of the World Cup.
In what way, Matt? What are your vibes?
I don't know. I would like a more expanded World Cup or U.S. Open Cup, obviously, but at the same time, we do now have this looming USL promotion relegation thing, the USL Division One league that's going to be starting in 2028. So I had thought that you're going to see potentially more investment from US soccer in a, like MLS is going to maybe change their to a fall spring calendar. You're going to see some pretty
Yeah.
seismic changes in the existing structure. So maybe I don't know, a different format of the US Open Cup. Leagues Cup is probably going to change somehow too, because that's iterating as well. You have the now midweek tournament as opposed to the taking a full month off. It just seems like up until the World Cup, everybody's trying to find the right groove and just get the most visibility out of everything. And then they're just going to use the MLS calendar shift schedule, which is still rumored. That's not actually confirmed yet, but I really think it's going to happen after the World Cup. I think they're going to take that, change it, and then who knows what they might do elsewhere, because if MLS and USL are not aligned in their summer schedule, kind of got to wonder what that does for the US Open Cup as well.
Yeah, I mean, the worry is they're gonna use. Yeah, like, I think you kind of implied it. Like they're gonna use that excuse to take away from the Open Cup.
Yeah,
more. And the
but
problem I have.
honestly, oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, you go.
Well, I was going to shift over to USL Pro Rel.
Well, I'll just say that I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. What was the City Voice interview where they brought that up? Who I'm butchering this now.
You're gonna make me feel bad for not listening to it now.
Oh, well, just that comment about let's see how many fans show up was killing me.
Diego.
Yeah, I always say his last name wrong, but
Gigliani,
Diego,
I think.
Yeah. He said that, and it really annoyed me because I'll go into this another time, but just quickly, I just want to say that like Open Cup is a historic thing, and if money is the only thing, or like it being profitable is the only reason you think it should exist, like it totally misses the whole point. And I don't know if that's what he meant, but it came across that way. So I just hope, that's, if you're going to use the history of our club and our city in soccer to sell jerseys, like I think you should also be willing to push something like the Open Cup, even though it's not super profitable. Like, we just saw the DFB Pokal, like we just saw a third division team is about to go up against a mid-table first division team in Stuttgart, Arminia Bielefeld. So that's an amazing final that they're about to see. And we're not seeing like Bayern Munich saying like, we got to get rid of this thing because it's not profitable. Like if they wanted to sound like MLS, they'd be like, well, Bundesliga is just propping up the third division of German soccer and they're pulling us down. Germans wouldn't stand for that. I don't think Americans should either. And I hate that any slight implication is being said by anyone from our front office that it's not worth it if fans don't show up. I understand what you're saying. I do think that's a metric that matters, but it is not the end of the story. And I think we need to make sure that is plain as day. And I think we need to make sure Open Cup is available to St. Louis no matter what place they come in next year is something that's important to me too. I'm not letting that one go.
Yeah, and I remember hearing what you're talking about of kind of put up or shut up is the sentiment was not the words that were used.
Not
But
at all, but yeah.
it was that's kind of what your takeaway is, and it's in the sense of I do. So it's first of all, I do think it's in the marketing of it all, it's tricky, right? Because you've got active games week to week that you're marketing, and you're focusing all of your socials on that. I think City did put out a video here recently about the U.S. Open Cup, maybe coincided with the tickets going on sale, but I do know for a fact that City is all in on this. We know how much
Yeah.
uh, they respect the Open Cup regardless of ticket sales. As an organization, they have a history, as little of a history as St. Louis City SC has right now. They already have a history of um, espousing the Open Cup and buying into City wanting to be a part of that culture of St. Louis being proud of the Open Cup. The statement that they made when it was announced that MLS teams were not going to be competing last year, that said enough for me. St. Louis was one of the few clubs that actually made a statement in their
Yeah, it's
desire
true.
to be. So St. Louis, Cincinnati made a statement. That carries weight, and that's not forgotten, especially for me and for us. And so I think you juxtapose that with the reality of what their ticket strategy is, and wanting to make sure that they sell out, or at least like they want to try and reach the point where they can be proud of the attendance too, right? So
Yeah.
it's almost a challenge in a sense. It's not. I never view it as the club saying, "Hey, if you say you love the Open Cup, if you're gonna have boycotts, if you're going to put such a focus on this on against Leagues Cup and for Open Cup, like." Now's your time. We're in Open Cup. We're not in Leagues Cup. This is the moment. Like, they're saying that more as a challenge because they've seen the talk. Now they want to. They cannot wait to see the walk. Almost, it's like reminding everybody.
Which
It's
is
like,
fair.
yeah, and so they expect to see all of that now because it was such a fervor from us and others. The supporter groups mostly stood aligned up until
Mhm.
the end. It was a fervor of support for the Open Cup in opposition of the Leagues Cup. And now this season, City is expecting to see the fruit of that labor. And I get it, right? So it doesn't surprise me necessarily to see it in that context. And I think that's where they're coming from is having seen what happened last year, the anti-Leagues Cup sentiment. I just think that it's more uh, expectations based on what has previously been said, and reminding everybody, don't forget what you said. And we hope that it's one of those scenarios. Remember Union Omaha 2 years ago, where I think it was it a third
Yeah.
round record attendance?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So it's, if you could set a round of 32, I don't think you can set a round of 32 record attendance because you've got guys like Seattle and Atlanta in those. But if
Mm,
you can get some like sellout type of a thing, that would be something to hang your hat on and really
it
further
would.
allow St. Louis to espouse just how much St. Louis as a city loves the Open Cup.
Yeah, and I'm so proud of St. Louis saying it's important to us. We want it next year. I let that get lost in my head when I start getting worked up about things. And Matt, I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I think that GA thing is right in line
I love
with
it.
that mentality, right? Like,
Yeah.
and even like Lutz starting the program for the kids,
Hey,
City
futures.
Futures, thank you. Um Amazing thing. It's a slow acting thing, but it's so important that that is available to kids anywhere in the city for free. It is a massive program that St. Louis is running. I've been there. I've done that with my kids. I love it, and it's right in line with that. Make sure everybody can catch an MLS game, even if they can't go on a regular day because of prices and things like that. And right in line with what the Open Cup is doing, allowing everyone in, every single person. So if we can just have the most democratic, mix of capitalism in there a little bit, but like as democratic as you can make a first division, first tier sporting game
Yeah.
in the United States, like everyone pays the same amount. Everyone comes to this game and watches us play a lower division team that isn't even in the first year of soccer, who, spends way less than us, right? Let everyone come, and the fans, I hope the fans respond to that. I absolutely love what the club's doing, and I do think we need to do our best to give it the full importance by showing up.
100%.
Boy, I'm a mess with words. That happens to me sometimes. Sorry about that. What else are we going to talk about today, Matt? I know I took us on a tangent there, but it's important.
Well, so we've got some city shot info that I wanted to get off real quick, if we could do that. There's a nice fun tool that exists that we found on Blue Sky from the guys that run the MLS Analytics account, and it gives you an insight. And I'll share some screenshots probably on Friday, but it gives you an insight into what's expected based on I think league averages and the actual expected goal metrics from low xG to incredibly high. The way that they categorize these is from poor, average, good, and great xG shots, looking at kind of 0 to 0.1, 0.1 to I think 0.3 or 0.25, and then 0.25 to 0.3, 0.3 and above. There's takeaways, so I'm not going to get into specific numbers because I think that's kind of boring on a podcast. But the takeaways are, if you look at St. Louis in 2025, the share of total shots that we take, we actually overperform as far as great expected goals. In league average, the league average is around 6% of your shots are going to be these great XG, so 0.3 or above. We have 8.8% of our shots as 0.3 or above. The good XG shots, which I think are around 0.1 to 0.25 to 0.3, we're overperforming that by like 1.7%. So not only are we like right on average, but we're just slightly above. We're also slightly above average XG. So basically, everything from a 0.1 to 0.1 and above, we overperform league average as far as our shots go. We are generating more shots with better quality compared to league average. That kind of goes against the narrative that we're not generating quality chances. And so I want to just add this as an addendum almost to our previous conversation to SKC about what we want to see and the lineups, the formations, the expectations, and kind of I view this as an opportunity to reset kind of the perception that we're seeing from St. Louis, because the share of shots, we're actually generating more and better XG shots compared to the average in the league. Now, the problem that you get into is the conversion of those shots. This is where finishing comes into play. So the share of overall shots is in St. Louis's favor. We are creating good chances. We are creating high quality chances enough to where we should be scoring goals. In fact, the actual XG of so we have 4 goals scored this season. Our expected goals is over 7. So we're basically almost at that 50% point of goals to expected goals. And we know that expected goals isn't the end all be all, but it really does give a good indication of being in the right place in the field to get a shot off and have it score a goal. So I mentioned that the share of overall shots, we're overperforming average as far as good quality shots. The conversion of those goals is the problem. The average for XG conversions, if you have a great XG shot, so 0.3 or above, 53% of those go in net in league average. Only 16.7 of our great shots have gone in. That's an abysmal number. We're getting these shot opportunities off in really good locations, and we are just not performing at all. We underperform all categories of XG shots. The poor shots, the average shots, the good shots, the great shots, so on up the scale. Like, I'm not going to go into the minutia, but the takeaway for this is, while I mentioned our share of overall shots, we're overperforming the getting in good positions and getting off quality shots. We're vastly underperforming finishing those good quality shots. If you get a great expected goals of 0.3 shot, 53% of the time you finish it, only 16.7% of the time are we finishing it. Big problem. So if you want to point to the ultimate issue that St. Louis is having and that will play a factor in this SKC game, you really have to look at the individual play and finishing those goals, because the data is showing that we're getting enough opportunity. We're getting enough good quality opportunities that we should be finishing much more than we have. That's the biggest problem and thing I need to see.
Yeah, and a couple things come to mind. I've been trying to get this in front of me while you talk. It's just not happening. But I have done a lot of research in the last couple of weeks of, what how many shots are getting, taken and things like that. And a lot, it's so early to be getting so upset. And I know I've been buying into it, but we've had 2 games that have just been just real extremes. One being Philly hitting us up high, and we were really annoyed with Watts and Durkin having a terrible passing percentage. And we talked about that, different reasons that could be. And now we're looking at, how bad it went in Austin. And, they bunkered in after the goal. And then we had lots of possession. And since they bunkered in, we just had the possession. We had more chances, more passes, everything that Matt just mentioned. It was way more than any other game. And even just those 20, 25 minutes by a long shot. And so to me, that's totally like when we look at not being able to finish, well, it makes sense. Like Baumgartel was up top. And when it's just that congested in the final third in the box, like it's just harder to finish. So I think this makes sense. And the only reason I say that, it's not all bad, because when you say under performing XG, I start thinking of like Carnell after it went bad. And
I know.
and it has to
Yeah.
be said, but I just want to defend it in that, like, I think we're still in the situational phase of having these stats. And I think it's going to take like 5 more games to start evening some of those out.
Yeah.
So even though
Eh,
some of those are encouraging as well.
And I'm glad. So if you're looking at the live stream, I actually figured out the technology to be able to share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. If you're listening to the podcast, just check us out on social media. I'll post these later. But this really does change the perception of everything, because when you see such a defensive minded lineup roll out against Austin and you see all those 5 center backs, there's an immediate perception that we're going to be parking the bus from the onset. And you can look to this tool lets you look at different game states, different opponents, and everything. But ultimately, I think you do have to look at the individual opportunities on the field. Remove yourself just slightly from the perception that we're rolling with essentially 7, 8 defenders in a game, and see what they're actually able to generate. Because I remember that Austin game walking away saying Conrad Wallum was real quality. Conrad and Salio in the second half was real quality. What we were doing in the first half, we had a couple early shot opportunities and we had a couple early opportunities that could or should have been goals, but they were not converted. It just goes to the finishing of it all. And so there's part of it is legitimate issues with, I think, lineup selection and frustration of like the utilization of Klaus, for instance. Like, there are legitimate gripes, but there's also how the team actually performs. And the buildup, when Olaf talks about being happy with a lot of the buildup we're doing, the chances created, he's talking about this here, the share of actual shots, where we are generating more great expected goal opportunities than league average. We're generating more good expected goal opportunities than league average even. Just, we're underperforming in poor XG shots. So league wide, when you look at SKC and others, most SKC shots are in the absolute poor range. Like, I'm going to pull up the chart over here while we're still doing this, and you can see that the share, this is what I was talking about earlier, the share of SKC shots that have great expected goals of 0.3 or above is 0. They have no shots out of 61 total shots taken this season that the XG is 0.3 or higher. That's madness for a team to be able to say that you've generated such poor shot opportunities, and almost 50% of their actual XG comes from poor XG shot opportunities just in and outside of the box. That's what we're going to expect from when St. Louis goes to Kansas this week. And it's why St. Louis's finishing has to start being under just a little bit more of a microscope. It's still early, week 7, match day 7. So I'm with you, Phil, on it's still early and figuring things out. But the finishing, if you're running out players like Klaus and Betcher and Toyshirt regularly, and Hartle's on the field all the time, and you're getting Wallum with shot opportunities, some of these guys have got to start finishing in the run of play, because the data is starting to suggest that we're putting ourselves in good enough opportunities to finish, and we're just not finishing.
And I'll just say, let's spread that 20, 25 minutes out over a longer period of time inside of a game, and I think we'll start seeing some of those finishing numbers go up just naturally because Torshirt's a great finisher, and I think Klaus has it in him. And if we get into situations where we can start counterattacking with our defense, I think Betcher's going to start putting them in like crazy. So poor guy has to run hard, but he only gets a payoff if we can kind of counterattack in most cases. So, yeah, really cool tool, Matt. This is so cool. I got to start playing with this.
Yeah, this one's fun. I'm looking at our Austin game actually for St. Louis, and we actually overperformed slightly the average of great expected shot opportunities because of Conrad Wallem in the 45th minute had a 0.3691 xG shot opportunity. So it's, we get these moments and in the run of play, they're just barely missing or they're not there, or, I think we're seeing enough good things happen in the buildup, good things happen in the run of play that we're going to start seeing the results. The law of averages is still there. Over the course of a season, we're going to get healthier and it's going to work itself out. I think the lineup selection sets the tone for everything, but at least give some of these guys a chance that are running out there at these wingback positions, because we're probably going to see a different lineup than we're used to this week. Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised and see Salio and Ostrak out there. But, trust in Olaf still.
Yeah.
Like he's putting these players, it's still match week 7. We're 2-2-2. My takeaway right now is this is the match to get it right. Rivalry match against a team struggling. The only thing they have going for them is essentially a new manager bump, potentially. They're missing a player. They're missing one of their starting center backs. So this is the match. And this is ripe for a first win at Children's Mercy. But on the other side, you're on a razor's edge of if you lose, because there will be, thought we saw frustration this week in the 5 center backs. If you lose against SKC and you end their 190 plus day winless streak, there's going to be a lot of frustration in St. Louis next week. But I would like to
hold on. What if they go for it? What if we see a more attacking lineup and then they lose? What does that say?
I'm sure folks will still find a way to gripe on lineup selection.
I'm just trying to get everyone ready. Like, have we thought this through? What if we get what we want and then they lose? Then what do we do, St. Louis?
Well, I will say, Phil, so one of the questions that I had for us that we didn't get a chance in the first 45 to go on was actually Olaf's approach in keeping a defensive first kind of lineup, which seems to be souring the fan base. You want them to transition from that lineup to a more attacking minded lineup. What we've been rolling out is the best defensive team in MLS, bar none. So you're looking to add real threat in the offense. You're not wanting to sacrifice on defense. Do you make incremental shifts? Do you make seismic shifts? Do you take out defenders and put attackers in at wing back? Because there are ways to stay in this formation and really blow up the system, so to speak. And that's putting guys like Salio at wing back. It's taking your defensive minded wing backs or defensively strong wing backs and putting in an attacker, because Olaf rates Salio as an attacker. There's so much data to support that right now. So many lineup selections and how he's talked about Salio. He views him as an attacker, a wide attacker, sure, but not as a wing back. So I don't look for that drastic of an approach. I still think you're going to see Conrad Wallem at one of the wing backs, probably Akil Watts at another. There's a joke going around that we might see Joey Zielinski at a right wing back spot. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the second half, to be fair, but I don't see too much changing in that regard. The whole player quality determines formation. Still, it gives you so much capability and consistency on the back line right now. We're talking midfielders are being stretched with the outings and the attackers are having some issues going on. But, the back line overall is still pretty strong.
And it's sad that Vollem, who looked great going forward, playing higher for sure. And even sometimes he would take the middle and Hartle would go on the outside to cover. And he looked great floating around with him and Hartle trading off at times. Not very often,
He
but it was a
did.
lot of fun to watch. I thought he looked good in those central positions at times. So that was fun. And now he's going to be a little bit of a leash on at the left side. But I just want to say that, like, I know I've been really negative, but the final thing I want to say here is that, like, defense does win playoffs tournaments, like knockout tournaments. Like, defense works.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
if that plan A works, roll with it every time. All I'm saying is, I want to see a more aggressive approach if we need some help is all. But I'm positive. Like, we're in a good spot still in the table. No problems. Easy to
Yeah.
get into the playoffs if we keep up this pace. No problem. So that's my last thing. I've cut you off a couple times. You trying to wrap this up, Matt. So take it away.
No, my last thing is I'm all for, and I think that he's developing plans B and maybe C based on what he's seen on the field. But to me, this is a game where you have to score first. SKC is ripe for giving up goals. They're ripe for giving up early goals. They have not started strong. I mentioned the stats earlier. If there's a game to take a concept of the last 20 or 25, as much as I don't like that idea of saying that can translate to the beginning of a game, every game, use that. There is a method to the madness of taking a lineup that was good at stretching the field, taking players that were offensively capable of good interplay in Conrad Wallem and Celio Pompeu, adding in a ball controller like Tomas Ostrak. Obviously Marcel Hartle does what he does so well every game. Those kinds of players and hitting SKC hard early. The benefit to scoring early against SKC more often than not this year is you get a win. And at worst, you get a draw. So the idea that you start strong is so important in this game, probably more so than any game we've played so far, because of how poor Sporting KC has been at being able to fall behind and regain a lead at all. They haven't done it yet this year. And so you score early and you're going to be in such good shape. I cannot overemphasize that in this.
Well said. It suits both of our styles. So let's do it. Good luck to City. I think we're all hoping for some fun changes, and I think we'll get at least some. I think St. Louis always responds when the fan base is up in arms. So even when we're not right. So that's been fun to watch. I hope you've enjoyed this. Tell all your friends about the Open Cup. I'll say it one last time. Make it a party.
Here.
Really support the team on that and the Open Cup. And cheers if you made it this far. Thanks for listening to Fly Over Footy, guys. You guys have a good one. We'll talk to you next time. Okay, we're out.